Like does that have to mean sex? It could just mean like don't. It probably means sex, but it could mean don't cuddle. I don't know. Maybe you're supposed to have like
don't spoon with a man ever.
Yeah.
This podcast was sponsored by King James and the 12 Disciples. Just kidding.
Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Growing Up Fundie. Just so that anybody knows who's listening to this, basically the idea here is that people get to tell their stories behind their religious upbringing, and they get to kind of lead the way talking about what it was like back then, what's it like now, are you still religious, are you not, did you change religions entirely? And it's entirely up to you as the guest to control how this goes in terms of, is it more humorous, is it more serious? You get to control the vibe of the episode. So if you want to be jokey about it, you're absolutely welcome to make it a humorous thing. If you want to be more serious, you're absolutely welcome to pick whatever vibe you want, because at the end of the day, it is your story and your truth. So with that being said, feel free to introduce yourself, tell us about what religion you're here to talk about today, and tell us about who you are.
Thanks for having me on. My name is Steve Horton. I'm a comedian who lives in Chicago, Illinois. And I grew up Catholic. I would call myself agnostic, I guess. I kind of dip my toes in like different waters. And for the tone of the episode, I have no clue if it'll be funny or serious. I don't really talk about this kind of stuff very much with many people. So we'll just kind of see what happens, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it can fluctuate. It is whatever you want. So how does one go from growing up in the religious situation that you grew up in to becoming a comedian?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much because, they always say comedians come from like fucked up households and whatnot. Are we allowed to swear?
Yes. Oh, totally.
Oh, thank God. Because, I feel bad if I swear I'm going to go to hell. I grew up in like a household where, my family was, it's not like there was a lack of love or anything.
Right.
But the love showed itself in a particular way where we weren't always open with our feelings and stuff. Like everything was kind of to a script. It's funny because my dad he doesn't want the family to like discuss a lot of feelings and stuff openly. Like that's what like liberals and people that go to hell do. He's a great guy in his own way. But then I found a collection of records in his basement, and he had like an old Steve Martin record, like the Wild and Crazy Guy album. And I remember playing it on his record player and just being like amazed that this person was being so goofy and so different than what I was used to growing up. So getting into stand-up comedy as like a teenager, I was like, oh man, this is so fun. So much more fun than my normal experiences.
About how old were you when you started to recognize that you weren't as religious as you thought, or you weren't as religious as your upbringing had dictated?
Yeah, I guess it was college. I suppose that's probably the case for a lot of people. That's like why everyone's so afraid of us going to college.
Right. Exactly.
Get brainwashed by the people who think about things.
The liberal media.
Yeah, I'm still kind of spiritual, I suppose. Not like religious in that like strict traditional way that I was raised. I grew up in like a pretty Christian household, even though we like never went to church.
Really?
Not really, yeah.
Huh.
It was important in my family to act like we were a functioning family from like the 1950s, sort of.
Right.
Even though like I grew up in the 90s. And so basically we were just trying to be the family from Home Improvement.
Trying to be the Nick at Night family.
Exactly. But we didn't really like go to church or anything. It was just always kind of like this, like, oh, it's important to have a relationship with the Lord or something. I went to CCD as a kid. What's
that?
It's like the Catholic version of Sunday school. It's at least what was in my hometown. I don't know what Sunday school even is. Is that a Catholic thing?
So I grew up Baptist, and we definitely had Sunday school where it was like the pre-church church. where you went,
Oh, okay.
it was either before or after the main service, depending on what church you went to. And it was for the kids or the age groups to separate into their own little classes. And then either after that or before that, you would go to the main service with everybody included.
Oh, nice. You know what? I think we had that too. But the thing is, my family just didn't go to church. So that's why I never went. On Saturdays, I would go to CCD, which was at this there was like a Catholic school in town that I wasn't enrolled in. But on Saturdays, I would go there. And it was just me and a group of like Catholic boys or whatever. I think there might have been girls in our class. And we would just like talk about the old like stories of the Bible. Today we're going to talk about the 10 Commandments. Today we're going to talk about the Israelites like fleeing Egypt. And it never got too deep. Like, even though we had all these opportunities to like learn about all these different like aspects of the Bible, it was always just about the same like 4 stories. And we would watch a lot of VeggieTales.
Yes. Yes. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because those 4 stories generated the fewest questions they had to answer?
Probably,
or do you think the rest was just a little, because the Bible's a pretty violent book, so do you think maybe
There's
it was
that.
Why do you think that is, that they
Well,
just
like we would study some of the stories that were more violent too. Like we would study the flood, that casual fun time when God committed genocide on the entire human population, except for one family.
Yep.
I guess maybe that's not considered genocide because it was just killing all humans everywhere. I don't know. But the point is, it's kind of like a mass murder event that God decided to do. We would, of course, talk about like Jesus being killed, which is like, they're like, yeah, and then it was bleeding from everywhere, and it was disgusting. People were spitting on him, and I don't know. There's a certain bloodlust in the church that just kind of.
Was there ever a time in your life that you really struggled between trying to decide if you were going to be religious or trying to decide if you weren't, or was it kind of just a clear, fluid transition?
Yeah. So I was in high school and I was kind of like a troubled student, I guess, because my parents got divorced too, like when I was in 7th grade. And it kind of like messed with me. And I was also the oldest child. So I was kind of like, all right, I'm in charge. Like I'm dad, everybody. It was this weird situation. And then so I just was like a C student in high school. But then my junior year of high school, I had a class that changed my life. And it was called History of Ideas.
Ooh.
And yeah, it was awesome. It was
that sounds cool.
Yeah, I think like an advisor just put me in it. I didn't even know what it was. And so I showed up and it was this like old teacher. He's like 2 years away from retiring. And he was like, all right, like this is class just to talk about whatever you guys want. And also this was like 2006 or 2005. So the internet was like, we weren't used to the internet yet. So he would start every class by saying, okay, what questions do you have about literally anything in the entire world? Go. And we would just like ask questions. And then he would sit there with the projector on and like Google the answers in front of us. And now you might think, oh, what a weird class.
No, I think that's cool.
It was cool because he was
literally like showing you how to research ideas.
Exactly. Once I asked, why do we laugh? Like, why does laughter come out of our bodies? We were like reading some like psychology articles. And I remember like he said, you guys can read any, like even this dense psychology article, like just spend a little extra time on it. If there's any words you don't understand, just Google those words. It was so simple. I was like, oh my God, why have I never thought of it like this before? So the class itself, after we were done with our 20 minutes of Googling random things, we would start talking about the actual curriculum. And the class was like, there's history of ideas. So it started with Mesopotamia and Gilgamesh and Judaism and then Christianity and Socrates too. Socrates, I think, was a couple hundred years before Jesus too. So it's kind of interesting how like Socrates and Jesus are like very similar figures. Like they both were like martyrs and died and started this like rebellious like movement of like thought, and then and then Islam, and then the scientific revolution and math and Isaac Newton. And so that class was the first time that like I was asked to consider like questions of religion and comparing religions and thinking about like man's purpose or humanity's like purpose in life and ethics outside of the scope of like a religious ethical system. that was when I first started to question, I guess, like what I believed in. It was pretty life-changing. And the teacher too was so encouraging. It's kind of embarrassing, but I wrote these 10-page essays for his class. An essay in high school should be like your standard 5-paragraph essay to like end with a thesis and a topic sentence. I was like writing poetry for this guy. One of the questions was like, what makes things beautiful? It's this philosophical question of aesthetics. And we had talked about like different theories of what beauty is. Socrates thought this, Aristotle thought that. But I just wrote like page after page of like describing my walk in the forest. I treated the essays assignments in this class like they were like I don't know, maybe it was like the first time I started doing creative writing, I guess. Like I just did that and he gave me like A's. He was like, this is great. But he probably shouldn't have, but he just encouraged all of my forms of creativity. That was in high school. And I still was very religious at that time still. I was like integrating that into what I was used to. Like, I remember thinking my career goal, this is so funny. I used to think I wanted to be a theologian.
Like, really?
Yeah.
What was the end goal there? What did you want to do with that?
To like be I don't know. I guess I thought theologian was a career path. So you could just like, I was like, I don't know what I thought. I guess I thought I would work for the church or something.
Did you think you would just sit around thinking about religious ideas and ponder the meaning of life? I
guess. My senior year of high school, I job shadowed a theology teacher at a local Catholic high school. So I guess I thought, I'll just become a theology teacher. There's only like 100 of those jobs in any given state in the country, but I'll get one, I guess. I don't know. That's what I thought I was going to do.
And then at what point did you decide otherwise? At what point did you recognize you were kind of hanging up that idea?
Yeah. So then like I went away to college and I attended Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and just like a small liberal arts school. And I enrolled as a philosophy and history major. And I guess it just sort of was like a slow burn. There wasn't any moment in particular where I was like, I don't believe in God now or something. It was just kind of like, I guess I started to think like, what's so bad about being agnostic or what? Like, why do I have to be so tied to this one faith? The more I thought about, and the more I encountered like thinkers that I really respected, like even like the founding fathers of our great nation, they were all like deist, and like also just relationships with different people who aren't super Christian. And I'm like, I guess it's probably rude of me to think that you're going to hell because you're not a Christian. Like the whole hell thing and whatnot. I was like, okay.
I feel like that's a big turning point for a lot of people when they start to recognize the people that treat them the best and the people they love the most don't subscribe to those ideas and those rules and those thoughts. And there's that moment in your brain where you're like, this is literally the best person I know, and they're going to burn in hell forever. How is that even, how's that even possible? I don't understand. And I feel like
it's like, maybe I should go to hell.
Say what?
Maybe I should go to hell then with them.
Yeah, like hell's going to be fun if all these people are going.
What's so great about heaven? What? You're like on a cloud, you're like singing all the time. Literally in the Bible, they're just singing a lot. It sounds boring. I try to just not throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to like family stuff. I might not agree with like all the conservative religious stuff that I was brought up to believe in, but all that aside, I still think that it's important for me to just, it's my family, like we all care about each other. And I just think like at some level, like that's just kind of cool to keep. My cat, shut up.
Shut up.
I know. I was living with my dad during the pandemic because everything was closed. And I was like, I'm going to save money on rent. And it was a little weird too, because I never lived with him after the divorce. So maybe part of it was like motivated by that too. Then like all the social protests were happening, Black Lives Matter protests and stuff. My dad like was not happy about it. He was like, this country is going to hell and blah, blah, blah. And then of course when the January 6th thing happened, he was like, oh, who cares, like no big deal. Like they were literally overtaking the Capitol. But
people are dying in there, people are getting killed in there. What do you mean it's not a big deal?
I know.
Do you remember any rules that you had growing up as a kid that you now recognize were directly related to religion as opposed to just normal rules?
See, I think in my household, just as it was in many countries throughout history, religion was used as like an excuse for like something else. Like we were like religious and stuff, even though we never went to church and we never said grace or anything like that. But
really?
We yeah, not really. We don't. My family's like too awkward to say grace. Like it's too many feelings.
So it was more of like a distancing yourself from emotions of any kind.
Exactly. I don't.
What do you think the fear was in terms of showing emotions or expressing emotions?
Just probably like general vulnerability. You know, religion gives us like a hierarchy and like an order. I think that's what my family like found comfort in that. It's kind of comforting, I guess, you know. Imagine believing in such a simple worldview that it's like, all you have to do is treat people like how you want to be treated or whatever, and believe in good old fashioned values of like patriotism and nationalism and just work hard and have a good strong ethic, and then you go to heaven and then you can like live with God forever and be happy. Yay. Like that's literally as simple as it is. So like when life is like that simple for you, it's like, well, we don't want to talk about feelings. Like feelings are just like emotions. That's like the devil thought. That's like those are the temptations that like God puts in you. Like you don't have to worry about that. Just work hard. Like that's like the answer to everything. Work hard, work harder. Like that's it.
Yeah. I also think it's very interesting how closely in the United States, how closely tied nationalism is to religion, which to me is so interesting because one, America did not exist. Two, it certainly did not exist in this Middle Eastern Bible that was written, because let's be honest, it's a Middle Eastern text. Like and I've always wondered how that even happened. Like we didn't exist, the country didn't exist. I'm pretty sure the Bible doesn't say anything about nationalism other than just, you know, follow the law and don't go to jail and be a good person. But I just think that's such an interesting combination that came kind of out of nowhere, especially in a country that says in its own documentation they want to keep the separation between church and state, which is the complete opposite of the reality that we're living right now.
I know, it's crazy. Any excuse to use religion to assert power over other people love to take that. There's so many people that are motivated by these literally insane belief systems. One of my friends is super, super Christian and like married a Jewish man and like forced him to convert to Christianity to prove his dedication to her. and
he did it?
Yeah. And she's like, he just loves me so much. And then she's like, and I brought him Jesus. I did it. To her, she checked off the box in her life. Like, she's a good person forever now. And she's like, for sure going to get into heaven because of this. But like, man, wouldn't it be so funny if she gets there and it's like actually Jewish heaven and they're like, fuck, we're both going to hell now.
Well, and also Jesus does appear in Jewish texts. If I remember correctly, they just don't believe he's the son of God. They believe he's a prophet. I think Christianity is just the only one that thinks he's the literal son of God. Yeah.
Which, like, what does that even mean? God, like, I don't even know what that means. How can you be the son of something if it doesn't make any sense, but whatever. I guess it's like God being a man. Like that's the difference. Like the son of God just means it is God. It's not the son of God. It's God, but it's a man.
Right.
Like Zeus.
Right. If you had to pick a belief from the Bible that you're like, yeah, that seems real and plausible, and then a belief from the Bible or a belief that you were raised with where you're like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, what would you say to either one of those?
If I was going to pick anything in the Bible to like believe in and stuff, it'd probably be just like whatever Jesus like actually said. I love those like red text Bibles, the ones where it's like, here's the words in red. Those are the only parts that you should pay attention to. Everything else is bullshit. Because the red words are Jesus's words. And then
for anybody unfamiliar with the Bible, highlighted in red are always Jesus's literal quotes.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And then everything else is like, oh yeah, also like fuck gay people, even though the Bible doesn't even say that.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that anywhere.
I know. It says at one point in the Old Testament, it's like, don't lie with a man. Like does that have to mean sex? It could just mean like don't. It probably means sex, but it could mean don't cuddle. I don't know. Maybe you're supposed to have like
don't spoon with a man ever.
Yeah.
Unless it's a blizzard, which they didn't have there where the Bible was written, so they probably didn't even know about that.
So they didn't have to worry about like warmth and hyper. What's it called when you die of frostbite or freezing?
Hypothermia.
Hypothermia. They didn't have to worry about that. Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm not even disagreeing with the Bible.
Right.
When I disagree with the Old Testament, because Jesus fucking said, don't pay attention to it anymore. That's what I don't understand about like Christians. Like Jesus was like, I'm the new law. That other shit's bullshit. Like, don't worry about it. You don't have to read it. You don't have to pay attention to it. It doesn't matter anymore. Just love your neighbor. I'm Jesus. I say love your neighbor. Like that.
And the people who wrote the Old Testament are no, that's not. No, we want this. This is working out great for us. Let it stay.
Yeah. And so then you got people like today, they're like, the Bible says like don't have an abortion, don't have gay marriage, don't blah blah blah. But like that's just all the Old Testament stuff. Like, what do you even read the book? Like,
right. And the Old Testament doesn't even use the word abortion a single time.
Right. Yeah. Like I mean,
doesn't even come up.
And of course, like you said earlier, there's no America, there's no gun rights in the Bible, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I brought this up in the last episode. They probably would have opinions on cell phones and glasses and cars and things like that, but that stuff doesn't exist. So how do we know that we're even following the biblical doctrine teaching of how to act appropriately with those things? Like, we could be sinning and damning ourselves to hell through actions we don't even know about because they didn't exist back then. Every time you log into Twitter, you get 1 point towards hell. Right. Like how would the Bible talk about social media? Right. Are we all, if you're using social media to proselytize, you could still be committing a sin by even having social media. You don't know because they didn't have it around to make laws about. Yeah. Yeah. It's prideful and vain. What's up with those deadly sins? Like, God, those are like not even problems. You're supposed to be proud of yourself. I'm sorry. It's like an important part to your mental health. Like, right. You're supposed to be a little bit vain, right? A little, like, not sure. Don't be a little, right? I mean, if it makes sense, just be authentic. What are the other ones, like greed and stuff? I don't know. I think it's very interesting that what the Bible does not talk about. For example, they never use the word homosexual. They never use the word abortion. Everybody has these very, very strict beliefs on what they mean about that, even though they never bring it up. And then the stuff that the Bible says very clearly, like, do not eat pork, stone your daughter in the streets for not being a virgin when she's married, do not wear mixed fabrics. Those are the ones where everybody's like, no, it's an ambiguous meaning. That's such a good point. I mean, like, it's just because they care about the other stuff so much more viscerally for such stupid reasons. And they want to be able to wear sports jerseys on Sundays right after church. Yeah. It's funny, like all these like rules and stuff we're talking about. Like my dad, I feel like I'm just making fun of my dad this whole podcast. But anyway, my upbringing, like he used to say, don't waste food. It's a sin to waste food. Can you believe that? Like, have you ever heard that? Where does it say that? Exactly. I asked him one time. If anything, gluttony is a sin. So, that's a good point. That's one of the deadly ones. Gluttony. Yeah. That's one of the worst ones. What I said to him, like when I lived with him like a year ago, I was like, where does it say that in the Bible? He's like, I don't know. That's what my mom said to me and what her mom said to her. And I was like, what's actually a sin? Blasphemy. Like, don't just make shit up and say that that's what God says. My favorite part of the Bible is when Jesus tells the Pharisees to fuck off. I love that. Yes. And what I want to make important to anybody who's listening is this is not a podcast about shitting all over the Bible. This is a podcast about being like, hey, have you read it? Because if you have, you're not acting like you have. Right? The people I know who have read the Bible the most the people who know exactly what the rules are the people who everyone says is going to hell. And the people who have not read it and the people who have never actually sat down and read the books are the ones that everybody goes to for the most teachings and the most, the most assistance with their spiritual walk with the Lord. And I think that's very interesting. Most people that I know that are agnostic or atheists or maybe religious, but less religious than they were growing up are the ones who have actually read the Bible.
I remember when I was a kid, like growing up Catholic, like I started doing like all the sacraments and stuff. Like I was like doing the Eucharist. And I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. I get to eat this cracker now. Cool. And then I started doing confession. I was like, oh, I'm such a big boy. I can confess my sins and make sure I don't go to hell. And I would confess to like the weirdest stuff. I'd go in there with like me and a priest. And I always wanted to do one of those private confessional booths, but it's just, they didn't allow kids to do that, I guess. I don't know. It was always just in like a classroom with like a priest sitting in a chair, and I'd sit in the other chair. And then I'd tell him
that seems a little
I know,
exposed.
yeah. It's a little weird, yeah.
Vulnerable.
Especially like knowing what we know about priests from like the 90s now, or the priests from like any point in time, probably. But luckily, nothing ever happened to me like horrible like that. But I would tell the priest, I'd be like, yeah, I want to confess, that number one, I like bully my siblings, like, oh, I'm such a bad older brother. And that's like fair. Like I probably, if I believe in confession, I probably should confess something like that. But then the next part, I'd be like, and I also want to confess all of my impure thoughts. And this is just like, I don't know where I got it in my head that like, if you think about sex at all, you're like a sinner. So I used to like confess that I'm like, oh, I'm having like impure, like it always just meant like I'm like thinking about like having sex with someone or whatever.
Yeah.
Most of the time the priest would be like, oh yeah, okay, say some Hail Marys and you're fine and stuff. But then one time a priest was like, what are these impure thoughts? And I was like, I don't know, like sex. And he's like, well, you're gonna think about sex. I guess this is not an example of a priest who like knows the Bible very well, but at least it's an example of a priest that didn't think that he wasn't trying to send a message that like God tells me I shouldn't be a biological human being or something.
It's almost like there's the old school conservative priests who are like, well, God will forgive you for thinking that way. And then there's these new wave priests who are like, look, you're gonna think with your dick. You're gonna do it. Just don't, touch anybody after you do that. Just, keep your hands to yourself.
So at least there's that.
Do you find that purity culture had an impact on you?
That's such a good question. Yeah. Purity culture. Is that what that's called? Is that what I experienced my entire life? Yeah, purity.
Yeah, purity culture is the idea that you need to remain pure and unsexual and
Yeah, I think that was a big aspect of my
Yeah,
childhood.
what's purity culture like for a guy? I've never
Oh my God. It's funny because it's hypocritical. Well, that's like why virginity is so valued or whatever. In my family, God, I hope my family never listens to this. Me and my brothers are like, like our dad, like our family. Well, yeah, our dad mostly is like, he doesn't really want to know about our dating life, but like, it's cool, like good for us, And actually, like growing up, I got like a few talks here and there about like, Steve, sometimes it's a good idea to lie to women. Like I was told that, or like sometimes it's like a good idea. Like sometimes he's like, sometimes you just gotta like say what you gotta say, and like to like my dad was like, listen, we understand that like we want to have sex, we're men, like we want to like, so just do what you got to do to have sex. Like it's so crazy. On the other hand, my dad doesn't want to know anything about her boyfriends or like any dating or anything. And it's so funny, like if we all like watch a football game, my dad will like apologize to my sister for like having a game on. And my sister's like, well, I like sports. Like I'm a, what? So I just don't know. And it's so crazy too, because here's the thing, like not throwing away the baby with the bathwater, like there is like a sweetness. I'm not saying that like I'm not approving of like the purity culture thing, but like you should see the way my dad's eyes light up when he sees like a little child like run by her. Like he has this like deep like love for like children, and like I don't know. Christmas in my family is like this wonderful occasion. Like there's like this purity around like Christmas, and it's so like loving and nice. And that's the thing, like, how do you keep those? I guess my struggle is like as a 30 something and like thinking about starting my own family, how do I keep all the good parts, without being controlling and making sure everyone like stays pure and
Right.
or never has sex, or I don't know.
Right. It's like, how do you keep the purity without the purity culture? Like, how do you maintain innocence and these childlike, I don't want to say vibes, but how do you allow your child to experience being a child and really hang on to that experience without also imposing on them beliefs that are often imposed involving making that purity last?
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Luckily, we have therapists.
Yeah. Was there a big dynamic shift in the religious teachings of your mom's household versus your dad's household after they split?
Not really. I guess my mom just kind of like, religion's not really a huge factor in that household, but the other stuff kind of has remained, the work hard mentality and whatnot. And that's why I think for me, like religion was really kind of just, it was there as like a reinforcement for the other values. We believe in hard work. We believe in, I don't know, traditional old fashioned values. And we definitely don't believe in vulnerability. Don't even try. And it's like,
don't even try.
And then we are religious, and like that's how God wants us to be. But I don't know.
Did they ever try and justify why they were never in church?
No.
Did it ever come up? Did you ever like have the, like, I feel like most of us don't really have the balls to approach our parents and be like, if religious is so important, why do we never go to church?
I don't know. It's crazy. My dad will like listen to like sermons on the radio though. So
yeah,
he like falls asleep to that.
Yeah. Which is also very interesting because I think the Bible does say, it's been a little bit since I read it. I have read the Bible through and through, but it's been a minute. And I do think that the Bible has very specific instructions on how many people need to be present or what they need to be doing in order for it to be considered like a church and a church service. Wow. And so I'm curious because I do know a lot of people, especially in the boomer generation, who are very, very religious, very, very conservative, very, very like devout in their mind, but also never go to church. And so I'm curious to see what they would say about that, or if they even know that the Bible has dictation in terms of what you can consider the house of the Lord. But at the same time, I know there's also verses related to having God in your heart, even when you're not in the presence of a church.
Well, it's fun. I mean, I don't know if this is related, but like my dad is Lutheran. No, he's not. He's Presbyterian. My mom is the Catholic one. But the thing is, my dad likes Catholicism more than Presbyterianism because it's more traditional and there's more of a hierarchy. He like loves the Pope. My dad always tells me, he's like, I was in Rome when I was a teenager and the Pope drove by and I felt God. Maybe the Presbyterian side of my dad comes out, and maybe when he like doesn't go to church, because I feel like he's like, oh, I listen to sermons. Like maybe maybe he doesn't believe in like the rules for church, and but he does believe in literally.
So he's Catholic when it benefits him, and he's Presbyterian. Exactly. See, that's like even more interesting. So your mom was the Catholic one. So did she want him to convert to Catholicism in order to get married? Did she care? Did he just kind of latch on? What was that?
I don't think she cared. I think because my mom was like Irish Catholic and my dad was like English Presbyterian. I think like they got married in a Catholic church. I think that was it. Like they didn't care about the other parts of it. But I was raised Catholic. So maybe my mom did care. I don't know. There's like this old photo of me and my little Catholic get up as like a 4-year-old, and I'm like holding a Bible, and it's like this, it's so crazy looking.
Does your family know that you are no longer religious?
Yeah, kind of.
Like they can kind of assume, or did you ever tell them?
Well, here's the thing. Like my grandma died of COVID like a year and a half ago or something.
Wow.
I know. And so it's, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but like my dad being like conservative, he like for a period of time didn't even believe in COVID.
Right.
He's like, oh, this is the liberal media elites like trying to convince us that like to get vaccinated and stuff. I don't think he believes in the vaccines are microchips, but I'm sure he's like read about it and considered it.
Yeah.
And
or maybe he just hasn't said it aloud. Maybe he's testing
that
his
also.
waters.
Yeah. Well, like even today, like when there's new strains, and he's like, oh, Omicron, Delta. He's like, oh, this is just big pharma trying to make more money. It's like, oh my God. So my grandma, like, she was in a nursing home and there was like an outbreak there, and then she like passed away due to COVID. That's when he started believing in COVID, I guess. I don't know if that was the answer to your question. I kind of forgot what your question was.
I did too, kind of a little bit. Oh, I was talking about like being, I don't remember how we got there. I honestly don't. I
think once I started talking about that, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, we were talking about like your mom versus your dad. And then we found out that your dad was actually Presbyterian, but now he's Catholic. And then we just went from there. But, and like whether or not he converted to Catholicism. Also.
Oh, you asked about how my family considers me now as
yes. Yes.
Oh yeah. So
that's
when
right. We both forgot what I asked you.
So when my grandma passed away, my dad was, mourning and stuff. And I actually tried to, I don't know how I feel about this, but I consoled him and I was like, well, first of all, she had a great life and everything. And also I know like this is hard and it's painful. And I was like that. And I threw in there, and I don't know if I should have, but I did. I threw in. And also she's in a better place. You'll see her again one day, like when it's your time. Like I just like went straight up like religious on him, and he found a lot of comfort in that. And I don't even know, like I don't necessarily like hardcore believe that or anything, but I just did it because I don't know.
Well, and I think a lot of people think that people who are agnostic and are atheist are anti-religion, like they hate it and they disavow it. And I think they would be surprised to find out that a lot of atheists and agnostic people really wish that there were a place like heaven. They wish that they could believe that there was something beautiful after all of this is over, but they just haven't seen enough evidence to support that. Yeah. It's not like, oh, you're dumb if you believe in heaven. It's like, I wish that I would see everybody that I love so much who died again one day. I wish that were the truth. I just don't believe it. I just haven't seen enough evidence, and it breaks my heart. But you don't find joy in telling people like, well, it's the last time you're ever going to see them again,
Oh, that's life. You better fucking get used to it because you're going to die one day too.
Like I feel like most agnostic and atheist people wish that were true, and they wish that their ancestors were watching them and guiding them, except like when they're in the bathroom and like having sex and stuff. But
I know.
But some people just have not seen enough evidence to support that that's true. And that bums them out legitimately.
Yeah. It can be like depressing and whatnot too. I remember like when I was in my early 20s, this is probably related to when I started like being less religious, was when I was in my early 20s. I was like, okay, I graduated from college and the real world is actually really hard. And I have all this debt and I'm not really sure what I believe anymore and stuff. And then I got like all depressed. I like went to a therapist and I did my 5 free Obamacare visits, and then I was done. My depression was cured forever after that. And I mean, all we talked about at those therapy appointments were like just religious stuff. Like I showed the therapist how I meditate, like because I was exploring like Buddhism and stuff. And then and she's like, you should definitely keep going back. And I was like, yeah, well, it costs money, so I won't. I'm agnostic. I guess I've just explored in my adulthood. I just kind of like have met a lot of people who have different belief systems. I've explored out of curiosity, like different belief systems, and that includes like theoretical physics, that includes Buddhism, that includes Christianity as well. And I honestly should learn more about like Islam and whatnot. And so I choose, I guess I call myself agnostic because it's like, yeah, there could be a heaven. There's like a new age thing where it's like, oh, there's source. And then what we are right now is like, we're like extensions of source or something, and then when we die,
Yeah.
we like go back to source, and we're like complete, like we become like part of God again or something. I don't know, that might be true too. Or maybe we're just like particles, and when we die we go back into what it's like to be the rest of the universe. I don't know.
Yeah. Any of these religions could be the right one. How do we know that we're the right one? Maybe there is a God, and maybe some other religion has had it right the entire time, right? Who knows?
Yeah, maybe the Mormons are right. That'd be cool. I don't know. So that's where I try to focus more in my life now on like just appreciating, like trying to be grateful for the days I have. I feel like it's kind of like if you like, I feel like religious people kind of might be shortchanging themselves, or super religious people, if they like, if heaven's the only way they can like be happy. I mean, it's just like, that's like wishing that you have like a pro athlete as like a kid. Like you're not, it could happen, but don't like hate your life if it's not going to happen. Like if there is no heaven, like what are we supposed to do? You got to find meaning in.
Well, and if you truly believe that you can be forgiven for anything, why not have a little fun? Like,
that too, yeah.
Right, because I mean, if you truly,
there's like a lot of
are,
people,
for example, as Baptists, if you are saved, if you accept Jesus into your heart, if you are baptized, you then can ask God for forgiveness for any sin that you've committed, and you are forgiven in the eyes of God, as long as you have asked forgiveness. And it's kind of like confession light, where you confess to him, you don't have to confess to anybody else. But if that's true, why not have a little fun? Why not experience some earthly things and then ask forgiveness?
Yeah, I mean that's what Jesus did, right? He like got drunk all the time. He used to like fuck around in the desert. He got mad and started throwing tables everywhere in the church, which is like crazy. And then he like probably was like married to Mary Magdalene and probably had kids with her and stuff. Like if you read the Gnostic Gospels, like there's a whole gospel about how Jesus was like married, and then there's a whole nother one about how Jesus was like a Buddhist, like not a Buddhist, but like he basically believed the same things that like enlightened Buddhist monks believe. So it's just,
or maybe they were like living together for a long time, but he wasn't married to her because, you know, he didn't want to get like politics involved in their relationship.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know if I can commit. You're like, I don't know what she wants from me, guys. Like, he like goes and hangs out with his bros. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, he comes out from the stone. He moves the stone, and he comes out, and she's waiting there, and he's like, "Oh, Mary, yay!" Hey, girl.
He's like, till death do us part. I died. Sorry.
Yeah. It's like, if you had a message to say to somebody who grew up like you know, religious, with purity culture, with this expectation of lack of emotional display, and now maybe they're questioning things. Now maybe they're not sure if they believe or not. They're trying to decide if they're more religious or less. What would you say to them? What message would you want to send to them?
Don't watch a lot of apocalypse films when you're in 6th grade. That's like,
make sure you know how you feel before you watch apocalypse movies.
Yeah. Because okay, what would I actually say? I would say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, religion's cool, but like, it's just like one part of life. And I feel like if if you really believe that God created you to be here and whatnot, then like he probably, they created you to, or God created you to be here to like, experience life. So if you were meant to like be pure and follow all the rules and stuff, then just, why didn't you stay as an angel, you idiot? Like, why would like, you were born into flesh, just like, so go do stuff.
To me, you're encouraged to do a bunch of research before you buy a car. You're encouraged to do a bunch of research before you pick a school. Do research before you make any big decisions. Like girls are encouraged to research before they even bleach their hair, right? Google it, find out if that's the kind of maintenance you want to keep up with. So I feel the same way about religion. I don't think there's anything wrong with people who want to be very, very conservative religious. And I don't think there's anything wrong with people who never want to be religious again. But I think it's important to know what you truly believe and why. If you are picking your religion because it was your parents' religion, or if you're picking your religion because you're just so scared to try anything else, I think that's problematic. And I think that's where religion gets problematic. But if you've done the research, you've looked up all the different religions, you've looked up the beliefs of atheists and agnostics, and the one that you are a part of, it truly aligns with what you believe. I think that's important too.
Yeah, I think I agree.
I think any beliefs rooted in fear are bad beliefs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the apocalypse films thing. I think one of the biggest motivators for me to believe in Christianity was like the fear of hell and the fear. I actually literally, when I was a kid, believed that like the Antichrist was like going to come back like any day and like,
yes,
like kill us all.
Yeah. Every generation has thought they were going to be here for the Antichrist. Every single one.
Yeah. So that was like a big motivator for me. I was just like, oh, I gotta be as religious as possible. Like I gotta spread the word of Jesus and stuff so that my friends don't get killed by the Antichrist or whatever. Or they do get killed and they go to heaven or whatever you believe.
Yeah. Where can we find your comedy, find your work? Are you anywhere online? Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I have a really bad YouTube channel called Steve Comedy. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter as my handle is Only Sandwiches. I'm actually in the process of getting verified with a bank account for OnlyFans, where I, for 50 cents a month, will post all of the sandwiches I eat every single day. And
really?
Yeah, that's
awesome.
That's my platform. So I just post all my sandwiches. And for $10 a month, you can get not only the sandwiches, but me shirtless eating sandwiches.
Really?
Yeah, well, that's part of it too. And then for $1 million, I'm going to try to, I don't know if you can set this up for $1 million, but if it's possible, for $1 million, you can get a dick pic. But
will it be next to a sandwich for scale?
I'm thinking about putting it in a hot dog bun.
There it is.
Just so stupid. So yeah.
That's hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah, once I get
Steve, this has been I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know this side of who you are, as opposed to just the comedy side of who you are. And I really appreciate you taking time to help me kind of start this conversation, right? Because I think it's important that it comes across that this podcast is not anti-religion, it's not anti-Bible, it's not anti-God, it's not anti-beliefs. But I do think it's very important that people be exposed to ideas that are different than the ones that they have been allowed to experience. And so I appreciate you taking your time to help me kind of spread this message and these ideas and give people something to think about as they decide who they're going to be kind of for the rest of their life and what they're going to believe.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for having me on and asking your questions. And it was a nice conversation. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate you. And I hope you have a good rest of your weekend and stay safe out there with COVID and all that.
You too. Peace be with you.
And also with you.